Howdy, this is Hutch and Torsek with the Defenestration Podcast. This is our first episode, and we are going to talk about some stuff in the gun industry that we really enjoy and we hopefully can see more of in the future. This is Torsek. He's going to go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, so like he said, my name is Torzak. I'm from Utah. I grew up primarily in the construction industry, and my interest in the firearm industry is primarily long-range tactical shooting.
I am from Texas, and I grew up kind of just doing a little bit of everything. My hobbies are typically hunting, and I'm a big fan of things like room clearing, urban combat, that kind of stuff, and so I'll be focusing more on that and the firearms themselves. Now, as far as things we're interested in, Torsek here is more interested in cartridges than the firearms that shoot them, and he's found some that he really enjoys, so why don't you tell us about those?
Yeah, so saying I enjoy them is a little bit of a stretch, seeing as I haven't had the opportunity to play with most of these, but I have a lot of interest in them. I see them out there doing really good things, and I'm impressed by them. Kicking things off with Hornady and their 6 arc, I think that it's pretty much the optimized intermediate cartridge. A great dual cartridge, long range target shooting, all the way into specialized tactical stuff. Close range, kind of an optimized, like I said, intermediate cartridge out of an AR-15 platform. I don't think you can get much better than that. And then their PRC lineup, 6.5, 7, and 300 PRCs are all very interesting and pretty awesome cartridges, to be honest. They're putting out some sweet numbers. They're pretty efficient, and I hope to see a lot more of those. From Federal, their 338 Federal, it's a thumper for sure. And looking at it compared to either 308 or 358 Winchester, it's kind of an awesome little sweet spot right there in the middle of 338 Federal. It retains more energy for longer than the 358, and definitely has a lot more energy than the 308. So I think that's pretty cool. And also from Federal, the 224 Valkyrie. If you're looking for a 22 caliber varmint cartridge, or even possibly tactical cartridge that you can run out of an AR-15, I think it is a dramatic improvement over 223 and 5.56. Capable of pushing really heavy for caliber bullets at decent speeds. I find it pretty impressive. So, and then from the Q, the 8.6 Blackout, super interesting cartridge. From all perspectives, it is the weakest of the 338 category until you look at that really fast barrel twist rate. That 1 in 3 twist causes it to have so much rotational energy on target. The results are just incredible, and I'd love to see where that goes in the future. So
I got a couple questions on that. Obviously, the one that comes to mind is you mentioned 2 intermediate cartridges there, the Hornady 6 Arc and the Federal 224 Valkyrie. So kind of give me the lowdown. What is the difference between the 2 of them? Why would you go with one over the other? Are they both like really good? Is there one that's like obviously better? Can you give some thoughts on there?
So it's an interesting question because you can't really, with any cartridge, claim that something is better than another. The 224 Valkyrie was designed for target and varmint shooting, like straight out the gate, whereas the 6 Arc was developed out of actually a military contract, and so it was designed for tactical stuff. Its application in the civilian market is primarily target shooting and varminting, but also it carries more energy, has less wind drift, etc., than things like the 224 Valkyrie, and so it's really effective on a medium-sized game as well. Uh, Again, are we? Can you really call one better than another? It's all about your application. What do you want to do with it?
And this also begs the question because obviously we know the two biggest calibers of intermediate cartridges are 5.56 by 45 and the infamous 7.62 by 39 from the Soviets, obviously. So how would these two stack up against those? If somebody was getting into the industry, like they're kind of new, they want something for kind of all-around use, how would this stack up against those two? And would you suggest it to somebody just coming in?
I would. If you've never been around firearms all that much and you're just now getting into it, the only reason I might recommend either 5.56 or 7.62 by 39 is because of how cheap they are, and so it's easy to get a lot of practice in, and it's a lot less expensive than either the ARC or the Valkyrie. However, if your intention is longer distance stuff, then 100% I would say go for the ARC or the Valkyrie, because both of them carry more energy than the other two, the main intermediate cartridges of the world, honestly, and they're just far more impressive.
And in your opinion, if you had to go with the PRCs and stuff like that, why would you go, say, 6.5 PRC as opposed to like 6.5 Creed? Or if you were to say, like, what would be the difference between like a 6.5, a 7, and the 300 PRC as far as application use, and what would they be used for?
So, well, I'll start off by differentiating the three PRCs. 6.5 PRC is a short action magnum. So obviously it's 6.5 millimeter projectile, and it's moving pretty quick. It packs a really impressive punch, to be honest. I'd say it's fairly comparable to long action cartridges like the 270 Winchester and even the 280 Ackley. It's putting out some really impressive numbers out of a short action, and it's a highly efficient cartridge, so if you're interested in hand loading, you're having to use less powder to get more results, and so that's super cool. Similar story with the 7 PRC. It was designed to replace the 7mm Rem mag, and it's, kind of the same story. It does everything the 7 Rem mag can do with heavier bullets, following the same trajectory, therefore carrying more energy for longer distances. That's going to be medium to big game, all the way out to 1,000 if you're a competent enough shot, which I would not recommend to most people. And it's in a medium length action, so kind of same story, more efficient, less powder, same results or better results. And 300 PRC, similar story, but compared to the 300 Win Mag.
And real quick, on that 338 Federal, is there a reason, if you were going to chamber something in it, that you would also want like a 308 over it, or say that 358 Winchester? Or is it just, this one is kind of a good sweet spot, realistically it can do both their jobs, so you would recommend that over both of those calibers?
Absolutely. If your intention is to be hunting inside of 600 meters, then 338 Federal will do everything the other two can do, but better. Kind of a similar story to the 5.56. The only reason I might recommend 308 over it is just that it's cheaper, it's easier to get into, it's more available because of its military use.
And how would it stack up against other short action cartridges such as 708, 7 SAW, and 6.5 Creedmoor?
So It's definitely not going to be your optimal long range cartridge like a 708 or a 6.5 Creedmoor might be. But like I said, inside of 600 meters, it's going to be carrying a lot more energy on target, and there's the argument about frontal diameter and how that affects hunting. So, that might be something that interests most people.
I gotcha. And then on the other hand, I tend to sit more with the firearms. I like seeing a lot of updates in the firearm industry. I like seeing new stuff come up, and I like it when things that were previously like unheard of become much more popular. And so there's some stuff I've been seeing, not necessarily recently, but up to this point that I'm really excited about in the firearm industry. I'm a big fan of Palmetto State Armory, for example. I actually have one of their AKs, and I love it to death. It's a wonderful gun, shoots amazingly. And I really do appreciate that there's a company out there whose biggest selling point seems to be not look at what price brackets we can compete in. Like, they're not trying to just jack the prices up. I'm excited to see them come in, and they want to make things accessible, and I really appreciate a company doing that. And you can get some really awesome deals on the website. I cannot talk enough cool stuff about them. Would you get, say, a better performing rifle if you went with some of the higher end guys, such as POF or LWRCI or Daniel Defense? Yeah, probably. But if you're looking for, think like the Honda Civic of guns, right? You're looking for a gun you can show up with, it'll function, it'll get the job done. You might not have all the bells and whistles, and it might be a little less performance based, but it'll work all day, every day. Palmetto State Armory, definitely the way to go. And then also, coming out of LWRCI, I gotta say, one of my biggest complaints with a lot of these new calibers that are coming out, he mentioned 6 ARC and 224 Valkyrie. Personally, I remember back in the days of 6.8 SPC when that first came out, and everyone was talking about, that's going to replace 5.56, which obviously it didn't. The big problem is they're fatter cartridges. That means that if you can't run them in normal PMags because they don't feed correctly. And even into things like Stanags, you have to modify the magazines, and also anybody who's used Stanags knows those aren't really the way to go. And so I've really been, I want to get these new calibers with these new rifles coming out, but nobody seems to make them with PMags, except for LWRC in their 6.8 rifle, specifically the Razorback is the one I've really been looking at. And while, yes, it is a fairly expensive AR platform, it's also probably one of the more feature-heavy ones I've seen. They seem to do a lot of good stuff. There's a reason they're very popular in my home state of Texas for things like hog hunting, hence the name. And I hope to see more stuff where more companies really come in. They use those wider magazines, those wider PMags, in order to kind of bring these more modern eras or more modern calibers into the era of firearms. Kind of on that same vein is Robinson Arms, which is actually a company that Torsak here turned me on to, because I was complaining that every time I go shop for some sort of an AR-18 platform, things like the SCAR or the new SIG Spear / MCX, they're so expensive. And it's like, I don't mind paying good money for a good product, but they're coming up with $4,000 or $5,000 for a rifle. And it's like, man, those are cool, but I really wanted to see more stuff that your average person could realistically buy and could really convince themselves it was a good price to buy it for. And he mentioned this company out of Utah. Where is it in Utah?
It's in Salt Lake.
Out of Salt Lake, called Robinson Arms, and they seem to have a really, really, really awesome selection of AR-18s in all different calibers, including things like 6 ARC, 6.8 SPC, 224 Valkyrie, and they're battle rifles. I say battle rifles kind of loosely, but the bigger, full power cartridges, think like a SCAR 17 style platforms. It's a little more limited, obviously, because realistically, there's not a lot of people going for that. But their stuff seems to be really high quality. I know Grantham did a review on it. If you want to see actually what they can do and see somebody who knows what they're talking about, really put it through paces, please go watch his video on it. It's really, really cool. But stuff like that, and I really appreciate seeing these companies come out and be like, yep, we want to bring this rifle, and we're going to sell it for almost half the price of its competitors. And for what I've seen on it, and I would love to get my hands on one, and eventually when we get into a little better position, we definitely will. But I really appreciate them really going out of their way to make things more accessible to more people.
Yeah, that's something we really like to see. There's so many manufacturers out there claiming innovation when they're just reusing an old design from the 60s or something like that, and they're not bringing in anything new, and it's just the same old, just putting it out there again. Ooh, it looks slightly different, but it's the same thing. And so I like to see companies like PSA making new stuff, like the Jackal, or Robinson Arms with their stuff in modern, more relevant cartridges.
And I would love to see some development. I'm hoping as time goes on. I know they've been out for a minute. I don't actually know the year they came out, but those LWRC 6.8s, those are really, really cool. And I hope that, because you've mentioned that the 6 ARC is very similar as far as cartridge dimensions to 6.8, and the 224 Valk actually was based off of the 6.8, so both of those should feed out of that wider magazine. So being able to get a weapon system like, say, the Robinson Arms series, if we could get one of those based around those new magazines, or newer, I should say. I know they're not new, but those newer designed magazines would be really, really, really interesting, I think. And being able to go into that really modern design with these modern calibers. I'm really excited for, hopefully we start seeing stuff like that in the future. I know that there are certain podcasts such as the Vortex Nation who talked really, really well about these cartridges and what they do, what they were designed to do, that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping to see more of a change in that way in the culture itself. And I'm just excited to see where things are going. I'm seeing a lot of development now. It seems like, I'm just looking back through videos and stuff, it's like for the longest time it was 5.56 front sight post AR and like bare bones AK, right? People on both sides of the fence being like, we don't need to develop, we just want to do the same thing. Give me a quad rail and a front sight post, and we're going to send it. And then on the AK side, it's like, no, I don't even want an optics rail on that thing. Give me wood furniture, the 1800s iron sights that come off of Mosin Nagant, and a 15-pound rifle, and nobody wants that. And so I'm really, really excited to see these new companies really come out swinging and doing this more modern stuff on both sides. I've seen AK mods that look really cool, and I've also seen AR mods. Obviously, an AR stuff is coming out that's really interesting.
Yeah, especially you mentioned, ooh, give me my wood furniture 15-pound rifle, let's go. I like seeing companies nowadays like True Velocity coming out with polymer cased ammunition. I think that's super cool. It's a huge reduction in weight, and so far as I can tell, they're producing match grade stuff, and it's really impressive to see. And I'd love to see a lot more development in that, especially in the cartridges that I mentioned.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see, especially if we can mix this in. This is all modern stuff. Obviously, no one's doing it quite yet, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. That being said, it's really interesting to see because there's a lot of different branches they could go off of. I think Backfire made a video about talking about kind of the 3 main branches hunting's going right now, depending on what state you're in, what you're hunting, and all that kind of stuff. Again, wonderful video. Dude's got a lot of information. He's very smart. He has a lot of cool stuff. Definitely recommend go watch him. And he kind of did the same thing where he was like, yeah, these are kind of the branches we're seeing the hunting world's going off into, and there's one of them that he's not super excited about. Meanwhile, he's really excited about stuff like these super high-tech tripods, these really lightweight rifles that have calibers that Torsak has mentioned, things like the PRCs used for these really long-distance hunting. And just like he's interested in those, I'm really, really excited about the idea that these more tactical rifles and stuff like that are going to drop in weight, drop in price, but also increase in overall effectiveness at different ranges and stuff like that. All right, this has been our first podcast. So if it's something you're interested in, please give us a like and subscribe. And if you want to hear us talk about more specific things, or you have some of your own input, please put it in the comments below. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.